Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk, Bloomington Normal. We've got so much to get to this morning. So, have you got your coffee? Is it hot? Because we've got some hot news. A man charged with that smash and grab, the jewelry heist at the Bloomington Mall. It's funny, I brought that up, and then all of a sudden, the mainstream media, who's in bed with the local government, starts reporting on it. But no, yeah. So it's hit headlines everywhere, and I guess they've come out with it now. Who they've arrested in that I'll say armed robbery, armed with a hammer. And it's interesting. We're going to look at the original post that Bloomington had released. And they talk about how this was a burglary, right? They use this term burglary, and then you go to find out, it's a report of a burglary. You come to find out that, hey, it's actually not a burglary. Well, they're charging them with the burglary, but they're also charging them with armed robbery. This is the most serious charge. They have armed robbery, and burglary. Armed robbery is a Class X felony, and it carries a mandatory 6 to 30 years in prison if this guy's convicted. So we're going to get to that story. I do want to get to the proposed Essex development, Collie Ridge, corner of Shelbourne and Beech. So this is a normal multifamily housing it's a housing project that is planned and probably rubber stamped, but there's a lot of outrage. I've had tons of residents reach out to me saying that they're very upset about this multifamily housing unit coming up. It's been proposed, and probably it's going to pop up right there. But you can make your voices heard, right? And you got to tell the normal town council, hey, we don't want this here. Okay. So we're going to get to that. We're also going to get to more Democrats at the federal level. They are arriving in El Salvador. They want to bring back this alleged MS-13 gang member. Yes, because they didn't get the memo that they're supposed to represent, American citizens rather than foreign nationals. So we're going to get to all of it here. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You can subscribe to the channel. We'll get to all of it real quick. cities929.com. You guys can go there and check out the cruise stops. Okay, so they're always being added. You can win a deluxe cruise. It's a Caribbean cruise from Expedia Cruises. Okay, so this is the best giveaway we've ever done. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's the best giveaway that we've ever done. And we have cruise stops in the Springs, and we're going to be taking entries, 2 finalists at each stop. You win a prize pack, and then you qualify for our grand prize giveaway, which is going to be on June 26th at the Smash House Tavern on Prospect Road in Bloomington. You got to be 21 years of age to enter. We're going to draw 2 finalists at each stop. And again, cities929.com, you can see where we're going to be next. Right now, it's May 5th. Deep End Tap in Bloomington is our next one. From 5 to 7, and the first drawing is going to be at 5:30. Okay, let's get into some local news. So this is a report from WEK. Yesterday I was calling on this radio program for them to release information about this guy that was at this Rogers and Holland Eastland Mall. This was January 11th. That's what it was. So this is according to WEEK. They say that the Bloomington man has been charged with committing what police said at the time was a smash and grab jewelry store robbery in January. Did they really say that? Because all they've really said, according to the social media post, and I'm going to pull it up right now on social media, so you know that I'm not lying and I'm fact-checking myself. Okay, this is all the Bloomington police had to say about the incident. There was no other update about this, and they didn't originally call this a smash. I'm not seeing that language here. They said, we are aware of social media posts circulating that and claims that there were shots fired near the Eastland Mall. We can confirm that that's not true. Bloomington police officers were dispatched to the Eastland Mall for a report of a burglary. There was a police presence at this location. Shots were not fired, and no evidence of gunfire was discovered. The investigation into this incident is ongoing. We encourage everyone to verify information before sharing it online, as spreading false claims can cause unnecessary fear and confusion. As always, if you are a witness to suspicious activity, call us. Call 911 for emergency. And that's about it. That's all they said about this incident. So, yeah, this is just ridiculous to the public. They seem to care more about, the victims of this crime accidentally mistaking the smashing of the hammer for gunfire, which, I mean, Cop 101 tells you that, hey, victims are going to recount or like they're going to understand the situation differently because they're in the heightened level of emotion. So Terry Jenkins, 31, allegedly armed with a hammer when he robbed Rogers and Holland and Eastland Mall. No employees or customers were injured. The sound of the breaking glass created confusion and led to unfounded rumors. This is how WEK puts it, that shots had been fired at the mall. Look, unfounded rumors. Look, this wasn't like people maliciously went out there and said that there was gunfire to stir a panic. Okay, there were people there who heard loud popping noises because there was a hammer being driven into a glass case. So Bloomington police turned to social media to assure the public that there was no gunfire, which, yes, they should have done. Hey, yes, there is no gunfire, but like this whole you're spreading false claims, you're causing unnecessary fear and confusion. It sounds a bit like victim blaming to me, and this is what we had discussed back then, but it looks like they've made an arrest. The state's attorney, or the McLean County State's Attorney's Office, they're going to charge him with robbery, armed robbery, and burglary. Serious stuff here that he's being charged with. So glad they caught the guy. Now, I don't know. There was security footage and things like that. He also took off on a bike allegedly. I don't know if they caught him that day and they're just getting around to charges now. I mean, it's January when it happened. So I have no idea. But I'm telling you, this was ridiculous. The whole you're spreading false claims thing. Come out and give us all the correct information. Give us details. At the time, the city of Bloomington police, they didn't even describe what the man looked like, how tall he was, nothing like that. And hey, call us in, call in tips. There was no description of the guy. And it's like, how is that possible that you don't release a description of the guy if you have the security footage? And, they just should have come out with more facts. If there was this popping sound that caused fear naturally with the victims inside of the Eastland Mall that day. All right. Want to switch gears here. Well, real quick on the Jenkins, he's pleading guilty or not guilty to these charges. Not guilty. Judge Gregory Minger ordered Jenkins to remain in McLean County Jail before his trial. His first pretrial hearing is scheduled for May 30th. Okay, so he's pleading not guilty. Pretrial hearing scheduled for May 30th. He's got to stay in jail. So there's that story. According to BLN News, when I get to this one, let's shift gears. Let's shift gears here. BLN News, they've got it. Diane Benjamin, she says, I've been contacted by many residents in Normal. Yes, you guys have contacted me. We are planning to have a series of interviews with residents leading up to the Planning Commission meeting. And if you guys care about this, and if you want to make your voices heard, you got to show up to that Planning Commission hearing. It's May 8th is the next Planning Commission hearing. If you oppose the project, you got to show up and you got to make your voices heard. It's going to be an uphill battle because who are the members of the Planning Commission? This is Chris Coos appointed every single one of them. And on the Planning Commission, Mike Matika and Ben Matthews, R.C. McBride. R.C. McBride is the general manager of NPR, right? Then you've got Ben Matthews, Illinois Education Association. Come on now, guys. We know that these people are probably not going to be representing the citizens as they should. They are all pretty much one-sided. IEA, the Illinois Education Association, the NPR, right? These are left-leaning individuals who are appointed to the Planning Commission. There is no way you could refute that. So according to BLN News, she's been contacted by residents. You guys have contacted me. The property was originally zoned. This is the story as old as time. Okay, I've told you that there is a push, even at the state level, to try to go after single-family housing. Why? Because they want to work with the corporate developers and make tons of money. The corporate developers make tons of money. These are their friends, right? Think BlackRock. These types of corporations come in, and there is a high profit on these types of housing projects. Okay, um, because you get the landlord and these corporate landlords who make a ton of money off of somebody who's in a shoebox apartment. They can charge ridiculous prices for luxury apartments or for these multifamily housing apartments. Okay, so they're going to abruptly rezone into multifamily housing. I've told you this is happening in Bloomington Normal. They're going to continue to do this. Now, what I don't understand is the Economic Development Council. They came out with some sort of study, and from what I've heard, based on that study, it looks like they came out with numbers suggesting that everybody who works in Normal or Bloomington Normal, they need a house, which is just kind of flawed logic. A lot of these people might, who work here, might not live here. Okay, they might commute in from other areas. Does every single person who works in Bloomington Normal need a house? And on top of that, do they need multifamily housing? Like I said, single family housing is something that is an American staple. It's a cultural thing. We like, number one, to travel into work. Okay, so we like to work in the cities, and then we like to travel about 20-30 minutes outside of the city and live in those areas. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of those people, and not to mention you want the house and the picket fence and the 2 kids. Okay, you can't fit 2 kids into a shoebox apartment. So is there a demand necessarily for more multifamily housing? I'm going to go out and say probably not. What winds up happening is these BlackRock individuals or these corporate-y type developers come in, and they can make a ton of money, and then they turn around and donate into the coffers of these politicians. Okay, their campaign coffers when they go up for re-election next round. Okay, that's what winds up happening. It happens all of the time. BlackRock does it with J.B. Pritzker all the time. They've got all kinds of Chicago developments. BlackRock does multifamily housing developments, and BlackRock has consistently donated into the Tides Foundation. Okay, the Tides Foundation, we know, is also Governor J.B. Pritzker, George Soros-backed nonprofit organization, and they funnel money through the Tides Foundation. BlackRock, they give money to that, and essentially what Governor J.B. Pritzker does, and what the Chicago politicians do, they give BlackRock, little thank you cards. Okay, so for example, Governor J.B. Pritzker at a state level gave BlackRock the management, they're the asset managers of Illinois' retirement Illinois Secure Choice Program. Okay, this was a thank you, BlackRock. Here, make a ton of money off of our Illinoisans' retirement savings accounts. Be the asset managers of all these accounts that a lot of times you're automatically enrolled in as an Illinois resident. So, yeah, so it's insanity. And then on top of that, you got the Chicago politicians who are working with BlackRock for all of these housing developments, rezoning into multifamily housing. This is a tale as old as time. And understand this, they are going to disrupt your tranquil, peaceful lifestyle in your single family residential area, your neighborhood. They're going to disrupt that lifestyle. They're going to increase traffic, and they're going to increase crime with these multifamily housing developments. And, this is interesting. I want to get to this email from Normal Leadership sent to BLN News. One resident emailed Mercy Davison asking her to arrange a meeting for the residents with the developer. Okay, so I've got honestly no idea who this developer is. I'd have to go look and find them and see where they come from. But they're going to make a ton of money. Okay, they're going to have a ton of money. And here's what the email from Mercy Davidson per the proposed Essex development. We're talking about the Essex development, Collie Ridge, corner of Shelbourne and Beech in Normal. It's going to be a multifamily housing. I think it's like 3 floors or something like that. Here's what Mercy Davidson said. As I mentioned below, I reached out to the developer applicant. He said he does not want to meet before the public hearing. Our process does not require it, so the town can't compel him to have extra meetings outside of the public process. I'm happy to talk with you over the phone if you'd like to discuss. So that is what Mercy Davidson said. So obviously the developer doesn't want to have conversations with the citizens who currently reside there. What do you think about that? I clearly don't care about what the citizens think. Do you think the planning commission is going to care about what you think if you live in this area? Probably not, considering they're all appointed by Chris Coos and they all have left leanings. They all lean left. I mean, Ben Matthews, I mean, come on, Illinois Education Association. Normal, like I said, there's this quiet banning that's going on across the state of Illinois. It's not just Normal, it's there's even a state lawmaker who's actually introduced and tried to get passed this past. It was a bill to outright ban single-family housing for highly populated areas to address the housing crisis. And, just like the scooters, I'm sure that they're secretly banning single-family housing developers, single-family housing developers. But your state lawmakers, your local leaders, they are working towards making Bloomington Normal the next Chicago. Okay. Multifamily housing, that comes with increased crime, and it just naturally does when you pack people into an area like sardines in a can. You're going to drive them. We're not made for it. Okay. Human beings are not made to be living on top of each other. And that's why the American culture currently exists the way it does, where you drive 20 minutes into work. So a lot of these people opposed to this development, this Essex development, they also are the same ones who stopped alcohol sales from being conducted in the One Normal Plaza. They succeeded just because that person who was requesting a liquor license there found another location to sell the liquor. But it's sad to see, you're constantly fighting your government to try to preserve your tranquility, to try to preserve your neighborhood and the feel of the neighborhood. So that, like I said, the next planning commission hearing, May 8th. If you oppose the project, go make your voices heard, right? That's democracy. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I thought you backed the blue. You're such a joke. Yes, of course I backed the blue, but I like that saying, but you don't blanket back the blue. Okay. And here's where we're at. And just, this is a reality. Okay. Since 2020, you're going to find, at least in the state of Illinois, in deep blue areas, that the police departments are full of people who don't think like you and I, and are not what you would call stellar officers. Okay. In deep blue areas, they're not going to be experienced, because in 2020 and over the last few years, this attack on defunding the police, you're not going to get good people in these departments anymore if you start defunding these departments and if you pull dollars from these departments, because the good people are going to leave. I'm not saying that there's not good people in the Bloomington Police Department. The person who's running their social media account, okay, the pencil pusher who runs the social media account in the Bloomington Police Department, clearly doesn't understand the importance of validating victims and not victim blaming. Okay, clearly, because that post felt very victim blamey to me. Okay, BPD, what they put out, they said that people who reported shots fired on social media were unnecessarily causing fear and confusion. and that they were to blame. Okay, no, the person who caused the unnecessary fear and confusion is the guy who wielded a hammer and smashed up a glass case in the Eastland Mall. Okay, Jake, or allegedly Jenkins. Okay, this guy who's pleading not guilty, but he's going to stand trial for this is the suspect. Okay, so whoever it is, either this guy or a different guy, that's the guy, right, who is the one who caused the unnecessary fear and confusion, telling victims of a crime, because even if they were not the ones being robbed at the Holland's Rogers store, okay, Rogers and Holland store, they were in the mall and they were also victims of a crime, and they heard popping sounds and they reported shots fired because that's what it sounded like to them. It was wrong, and all the Bloomington police had to do is come out and say there were no shots fired. What the popping sounds were was the sound of a hammer smashing glass. That's all they had to say. But they didn't even say that. Okay, they led to even more further fear and confusion, in my opinion, with that social media post, because they didn't talk about the suspect. They didn't say that, hey, he took off on a bicycle. Hey, he's 5 foot whatever. He's got black hair. No description of the assailant. And I think that they caused even more unnecessary fear and confusion with that social media post, because if I'm a business owner in Bloomington, I'm thinking the guy's still at large. I'm thinking that I'm next. And he's going to be out there wielding a deadly weapon, a hammer, okay, against people and stealing things. Okay, so the fact that they didn't come out with any suspect information after all that sound and popping, I mean, there had to be hundreds of witnesses. There had to be, or hundreds. There had to have been like tens of witnesses because it's Eastland Mall. Remember, I'm being exaggerated. So there were witnesses, definitely. Somebody saw him robbing the store. There was a victim there at Rogers and Holland. I'm sure they provided a description of him. There was also security footage. The fact that they came out with the social media post and used the social media post to rather blame victims instead of placing the blame rightfully on the criminal who victimized the entire mall. So backing the blue. Look, pal, backing the blue doesn't mean blanket statement, and especially in 2025, because after the defund the police movement, after the George Floyd riots, a lot of great officers exited the field. Okay, they are no longer a cop because of the damage that was done because of the 2020 protests. So when you say back the blue, sure, I'll back the blue all day long if they're great officers, and but the pencil pusher behind the desk creating this social media post was wrong, and the people at the tippity top who approved this, right, and didn't provide any more information to the public after that smash and grab, causing more unnecessary fear and confusion. And decided to use the platform to victim blame, in my opinion. Uh, that is not something to support. That is something to condemn. That is something to call out, and that's what I'm doing here on this program. So, yeah, backing the blue. You're such a joke. Yeah, I back the blue. Not like blanket statement. Back the blue always, no matter who they are. Right? No. No illegals next door. Yeah, this is what is in demand. 2.5 kids, a house, picket fence. Like, that is just the American way. Okay, this is a culture that we've created here in America, and that is the demand. Okay, that is out there, and you can do all the studies you want that say there's this housing crisis and that everybody who lives or works in Bloomington normal needs a multifamily residence. You can say that all you want, but the reality is you can't phase out single family housing. You're going to wind up creating a Chicago. And as we saw, Chicago has completely been destroyed, and it never works when you stack people on top of each other in these urban areas. It just doesn't work. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat City's 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Yes, it turns out that there were some protesters outside Darren LaHood's office. I'm going to get to his statement that his comms team um, sent to me, but I do want to play. This is Crystal Label, McLean County board member, on her social media page. She had posted that she was live there. There are obviously some protesters, some in wheelchairs. They're protesting. I don't know what exactly, because Medicaid isn't really going anywhere, but they're upset because Medicaid is not going away. Take a listen.
Adapt Chicago Life Centers for Independent Living and Bloomington Normal community members who are advocating for no cuts to Medicaid. We are gathering in the plaza right outside the Amtrak station right now. At about 12:30, we will be moving over to Rep. LaHood's office, right diagonal from us here, where his entire staff has exited the building and left for the day. So we will not be meeting with Congressman LaHood or anyone from his staff, as we suspected, but we will still be making our voices heard. So please come down to Uptown Normal, join your fellow community members and disability rights organizations to fight for no cuts to Medicaid and no tax breaks for billionaires. Again, we're here now. We will be here till probably around 2 o'clock or so, meeting right outside the Amtrak station in Uptown Normal, and we will be moving over in front of Darren LaHood's office at 12:30.
Okay, and I like what this individual said on this social media post. He said, if Congressman Eric Sorensen had an office in Bloomington Normal, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be around to randomly answer questions without notice. Yeah, I mean, the courtesy would be to have reached out to Congressman LaHood if these individuals actually wanted to have a serious conversation about Medicaid being in possible jeopardy, which it's not, by the way. We're going to get to that here in just a second. He says, Jeff, he says, quote, unfortunately, you have to stalk federal congressmen and women like your paparazzi to get them on a face-to-face level. So it's really hard to get in touch with your congressman. And I kind of like what he says here. Part of the reason, although it was out of concern for safety of the congressperson, which I totally agree with, like, hey, this congressperson is going to, although this looks like a pretty friendly group of people, yeah, these people don't look dangerous at all. But we're living in a time, like, remember Rodney Davis, right, in the ball field, the Bernie Sanders supporter who went completely crazy. They have to take precautions, the safety of the congressperson. Although this looks like a pretty friendly group of people, but all it takes is to let your guard down once, right, for a congressperson. So, he goes, quote, I wonder, Crystal, did you let him know you were going to be arriving at his office, or did you guys just gather and start screaming outside of his office? And was the real intention here, and I want to get to this, the real intention here is not to get Congressman LaHood to answer questions about Medicaid and the jeopardy and Medicaid being put into jeopardy. Okay, and they were planning this for a while. I mean, I saw the social media post that they were going to be gathering outside of Darren LaHood's office. I bet nobody even called him, got him on the phone and asked, hey, are you going to be here? We have a couple of representatives. We're going to make our voices heard about Medicaid. Would you like to talk with us and sit down and talk with us as constituents? I'm sure that's not what happened. This was designed to create chaos. Okay, they wanted to create chaos and they wanted to protest something and be loud for really no reason. And the left is really good at this. We saw it at the Charlie Kirk event. They didn't even know what they were exactly protesting. In fact, they were screaming, free John pig or something like that, which is a internet meme, and they were just being loud to be loud. John Pork, that's its name, John Pork. It's like a social media meme, and it meant nothing. Okay, and much like this protest meant nothing, because nobody actually probably called the congressman to have a sit down, a one-on-one with a couple of these representatives from whatever group they're from, probably Crystal Label's group, the organization. that she's the executive director of, but most likely they didn't say, "Hey, we have two representatives who want to talk about point A, B, C, and D, our policies concerns," but they don't have point A, B, C, and D because there is no threat to Medicaid. Medicaid is not going away. Social Security is not going away. Here's what Congressman Representative LaHood said, quote, "Our country is facing a national security crisis. We are $36 trillion in debt, and I believe Congress has a responsibility to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse in federal spending. For federal programs, including Medicaid, to exist for years to come, we need to prioritize the spending crisis facing our country. We should be focused on restoring Medicaid to its primary intended focus, high quality patient care serving those who need it the most, including children and those who are disabled," Representative Darren LaHood said. Instead, the current structure of these programs prevent Medicaid benefits from going to those who truly need and deserve them. In Congress, we are working to address waste, fraud, and abuse in this program, increasing transparency, support rural and underserved communities, and prioritize care for the nation's most vulnerable. Yes, that's at the end of the day, that is what's happening with Medicaid Social Security. The guy who's 120 years old, who's dead and has been dead for several years, is not going to be getting Social Security benefits anymore. So therefore, his benefits are going to go to somebody who actually needs them. What a concept. All right, I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Oh, BN Little Chicago. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that the people who lived rural McLean County called BN Bloomington Normal Little Chicago. It is Little Chicago. And they're trying to make it Little Chicago. I've already talked. We've got the multifamily housing projects and the increased crime rate to prove it. Bloomington, they just did a committee of the whole meeting, where there was a presentation. They presented this crime report, right? The crime report details out that there's been an 88% increase in robberies, okay, and an overall crime increase of 1.5%. Okay, so there's been a crime increase here in Bloomington. We've got that. Check. Are we like Chicago? Increased crime rate. Check. Multifamily housing projects and no more single family housing projects. Check. And that's why people really liked Bloomington Normal, is the feel. It feels like a small town. Even just the last few years, it's really amped up. But it feels like a small town, but it's a larger city. The population is pretty big. But because of the single family zoning and because of these small little neighborhoods like Shelbourne, like Wintergreen, it gives you that small town feel, but you happen to live in a bigger neighborhood. Okay. Normal, especially, has that small town feel. Leaders, politicians, government officials, they have always touted that as a reason why Bloomington Normal is so great. But they are destroying that neighborhood feel, that small town feel, by adding more and more multifamily housing that nobody really asked for. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Bum, 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 ba-da-ba-da. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Chris, on the stream, you guys can find me on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble, and you can subscribe to the channel. He says, you might not know this, but us people in rural McLean County, we already call Bloomington Normal Little Chicago, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. We've already got the multifamily housing developments. We talked a lot about that this morning. It's planned. It's Essex, okay, and it's right there, Shelbourne, Beech, the corner of Shelbourne and Beech, Collie Ridge. Okay, it's going to affect these neighborhoods, and they originally had its own single family, but that was abruptly rezoned for multifamily housing. And then there's this developer who won't actually meet with the citizens who are concerned that this is going to disrupt their peaceful lifestyle. This is going to increase traffic, increase crime. This is what happens when you pack human beings on top of each other like a can of sardines, okay? That's just what winds up happening. And in Bloomington, we've already got the increased crime, 1.5% overall crime increase, and then 88% rise in robberies. We talked about the robbery, the smash and grab, and the response from Bloomington Police Department. People were really upset on social media. They were like, whatever happened to back the blue, cat? Yes, back the blue, but not to the point where you're not willing to call out the pencil pusher behind the desk who made this social media post and essentially victim blamed people for thinking that the smashing of a hammer sounds like gunshots. Duh. And you're in an emotional state. People are running around screaming. And not to mention, it was a hammer, a deadly weapon. There was reason to be afraid in the Eastland Mall. And this social media post, it just didn't give you any details about what had actually happened. There was a report of a burglary, is what they said, which it really wasn't a burglary. They're going for a burglary in the charges, but really, the big one here is armed robbery. Took a hammer, robbery, burglary. They're totally different things. They're going for burglary, robbery, and armed robbery is what they're charging him with, the McLean County State's Attorney. But we've got the crime. We've got the multifamily housing. What's next? We're going to have Brandon Johnson come down here and be the mayor. Yeah, essentially it looks like Chicago, Bloomington normal, and that's what the goal is. Okay, so if you want to make your voices heard, Planning Commission, it's going to be May 8th. They are planning this multifamily. I think it's like 3 floors or something like that. It's big unit, right? Multifamily housing unit. So, apartments that are kind of small. And like I said, I don't think that there's much of a demand for that. Just historically and culturally, Americans, they like the dog, they like the fence, they like the house that they can put their 2.5 kids in. Okay, this is just the American way. And forcing multifamily housing down the throats of Bloomington normalites, Bloomington residents and normal residents, it's just dumb. I just don't know how else to put it. You're just trying to make it Chicago because they've screwed up Chicago so bad. And a lot of these residents who are opposed to this housing development, they were also opposed to alcohol sales. So this tells you about the constituency there. They don't want to disrupt the tranquility and the peacefulness of this neighborhood. And from what I've always understood about Bloomington Normal, at least this is what government officials have always talked about and prided themselves on, is that community, especially Normal, you get that small town feel. So you've got these Wintergreen, you've got Collie Ridge, you've got Shelbourne, you've got these smaller type neighborhoods, so you get that small town feel, but you live in a bigger city. And they've always prided themselves on this, and it's because of the single family housing zoning. And they've kind of been an outlier in this, but now, because that money just looks so good, right? I mean, you've got these corporate landlords who come in, they make a handful, hand over fist cash off of these suckers in these apartments, right? Who own nothing, and you'll be happy don't worry, I own everything. You sit in your, shoebox apartment, you own nothing, but you're going to be happy paying me thousands of dollars in rent. And then I'm going to take my money and then I'm going to make sure that I continue to build more and more developments here in Normal by donating my money that I make to the politicians who allow me to come here and develop my housing projects. This is how it goes. Okay. So I want to get to this. I don't have a whole lot of time in this segment, but several Democrats, they've arrived in El Salvador with the intent of bringing the alleged MS-13 gang member, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I can't believe how long this has been in the news, and it is starting to really peeve me off that this guy is still in the news. He's an MS-13 gang member. He has MS-13 gang tattoos all over his hand. Come on, guys. This guy's an MS-13 gang member. You are making yourself look stupid by going to El Salvador and trying to get this guy to come back to the United States when even the El Salvador president says, oh, no, we're not going to bring a terrorist back into a gang member back into America. You've got both presidents of two countries saying the exact same thing, that this guy is dangerous and he needs to be in the El Salvador prison. Okay. So, but you've got Democrats going there to try to bring him back, which is just outrageous to me. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Good morning. I appreciate it. Smash that like button. Good morning. Good morning. Now we're going to get to Kilmar here. Now it's just factually incorrect to claim that deporting an alleged gang member is a threat to Americans. Okay. They're saying that this is a threat to democracy, a threat to democracy. Look, you don't hear the Democrats talking about how, convicted felons, people who murder people with guns, okay? Here in the state of Illinois, if you murder somebody with a gun, your gun is taken away from you and you can never have a gun ever again. You never hear Democrats talk about how that's a violation of the Second Amendment and how that's a constitutional crisis. It's only a constitutional crisis when you've got an MS-13 gang member, okay, when he doesn't get due process. It's also very different, by the way. There's obviously due process. This is a convicted felon here, and he actually murdered somebody. I don't agree with it necessarily. I think that even felons should have their Second Amendment rights restored. Now, the reason why that's so controversial now is because prior to, we need to bring back the death penalty, right? People who murder people, they typically, historically, would have been killed. Okay. If you killed somebody, you get killed. That's how it used to go. And murderers never had the opportunity to gain access to weapons ever again to kill some more people. Okay. And we also had better reform in our prisons. We had mental institutions, people who were crazy. We kept them in there. We need to reform our prisons so that way we keep the dangerous people away from the law-abiding citizens. Okay, so if we were to fix that, then we wouldn't have to worry about stripping people of their Second Amendment rights after they've served their time. Okay, and if you are truly reformed and can re-enter society, there's no reason why you shouldn't have your Second Amendment rights restored. So yeah, anyway, they don't talk about that at all, the Democrats. They're talking about this illegal immigrant who's in the country illegally. Okay, let's not forget about that. He broke federal immigration law. He was in the country illegally, and he wasn't afforded due process or whatever because there was some sort of clerical error and the deportation order was generated prior to him kind of arguing his case. He was here in this country illegally, and they're arguing for due process, due process, due process. At the end of the day, it's different. Okay. The president of the United States is of the executive or executive branch. The executive branch, they are tasked with national security. And the president is the one who holds this power of national security. The executive branch holds this power of deportations and law enforcement. And there really is no due process for illegal immigrants. There's just not. Okay. Or at least there shouldn't be. It really is up to that executive branch to do this. And really, the Supreme Court with this ruling, they're the ones who are kind of overstepping. The President of the United States, as the commander in chief, he's the one who deals with national security and terrorism. And, the court's coming in trying to do the president's job and be activist judges essentially and do the president's job. That is where they're stepping over their line. Okay, the Supreme Court is stepping over their line of what they need to do. So yeah, he wasn't illegally abducted. Okay, number one, he was illegally here in the country, and we sent him back to his homeland for breaking federal immigration laws. Okay, and the nerve that this woman has, we're going to get to this Democrat. There are several Democrats who went to El Salvador. But this Democrat, the nerve that she says that Trump does not respect the branches of government. Look at Joe Biden, okay? And I hate to do this whataboutisms, but look at what Joe Biden did with the Supreme Court ruling when it came to student loan forgiveness, okay? He took a poop all over the Supreme Court in that decision, and he did it anyway, okay? So, and that wasn't a matter of national security. We're talking about a matter of national security. The Supreme Court has no say over this at the end of the day. Okay, he's trying to enforce the rule of law as an executive branch, and the Supreme Court at the end of the day has no say over that kind of stuff. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat of Cities 92.9. We've got to get to this. Several Democrats have arrived in El Salvador with the intent of bringing back an alleged MS-13 gang member. You guys are just starting to look dumb, totally dumb, these Democrats who keep going to try to get this guy back. Kilmar probably doesn't want to go back because it'll make him look like, so the reason why he came to the country, he was seeking asylum in this country because he didn't want to get killed by rival gang members in El Salvador. He illegally came to the country, tried to seek asylum. Joe Biden was the Joe Biden administration didn't deport him right away, being that he was an MS-13 gang member. There's documents that prove that he is an MS-13 gang member, by the way, and he wanted to leave El Salvador because he didn't want to get killed by rival gangs. If he starts talking with these Democrat lawmakers, and this is what they're not understanding, the reason why Kilmar is not going with them or not talking with them is because if he talks to these Democrats, he's going to get killed, okay, in his El Salvador prison because he is a member of the MS-13 gang, and the rival gangs are going to think that, or the MS-13 gang that he's a part of, they're going to think that, oh, he's ratting us out. He's a rat. Okay, so that's what they're going to think if he comes back to the United States, that he worked out some sort of deal. That's why he's staying quiet, why he's not talking with these members of the Democrat Party who have gone to El Salvador to bring him back. He's not going to talk to them because he's a member of the MS-13 gang, and if he does, he's going to look like a rat, and he's going to die. Okay, so that's why he's not meeting with them. They're starting to look really dumb. Take a listen.
Congresswoman Maxine Dexter here, coming to you from El Salvador. I flew here last night with 3 of my colleagues to demand that Kilmar Abrego Garcia be released. He is being held in violation of a Supreme Court order expressly telling the Trump administration to effectuate and facilitate his coming home. That is being ignored. This is not just a threat to all people in the United States who could be illegally abducted, detained, and transported internationally against their will, but it is a fact that our president does not recognize the branches of government and the balances of power. This is what we all have been calling a constitutional crisis, yet it is more severe than anything we've seen. We cannot stay silent. We must stay loud. I am here because I refuse to wait for something to happen. We are here to release Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
We are here to release Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It's like, come on, this lady, I mean, she's got some nerve claiming that Trump does not respect branches of government. What about her guy, Joe Biden? Do we not remember when he took a poo all over the Supreme Court ruling that pertained to forgiving student loans? I mean, he did it anyway. The Supreme Court told him he couldn't, and he did it. This is different in that Donald Trump is working on national security issues. He's the commander in chief. He's a part of the executive branch. This is a matter of national security. And really, the Supreme Court has got no say in that. And I think it's interesting. You never hear these Democrats talk about the Second Amendment, the constitutional crisis over the Second Amendment. You've got felons after they've, murdered somebody, who get their guns taken away, or even extreme gun crime. Any kind of felon, they get their guns taken away. At least here in the state of Illinois, okay, you can no longer own weaponry or a gun in the state of Illinois. They don't talk about the Void Guard, how that's a constitutional crisis. You're entitled to bear arms, okay, and the government shall not infringe on that. That extends to, there are no clauses in the Second Amendment that say except for felons. Felons cannot, bear arms. There's no clause in the Second Amendment that says that. But they're silent on that, but now because, Kilmar, he's been, quote, illegally abducted, which is they're not working with facts here. The fact is that he is a known MS-13 gang member. He was here in the country illegally. He fled El Salvador because he didn't want to get killed by a rival gang, and he came to the United States. Donald Trump deported him as a matter of national security. He's a terrorist. The Supreme Court really has got no say over that. Why? Because Donald Trump is the commander in chief, and this is a matter of national security. You want to start talking about the constitutional crisis? Okay, let's do it. Let's talk about the Second Amendment violations. Let's talk about Joe Biden and the student loan forgiveness. You want to talk about constitutional crisis? Let's start there, shall we? I'm starting to get fed up with these liberals. I'm starting to get real pissed off. So this lady, she's obviously an idiot, where, she's talking about Donald Trump and he doesn't respect the branches of government. Joe Biden is the one who doesn't respect the branches of government. These people don't respect the branches of government. Trump is simply trying to work on national security. He's a terrorist. He's a MS-13 gang member. He came to the country illegally. He's trying to flee a rival gang in El Salvador and avoid getting his head chopped off, probably by a rival gang. This is a violent guy, okay? And he came to this country, and Donald Trump deported him. Why? Because he's a clear and present danger to American citizens. Okay. And, the Supreme Court has no say over that. They really don't. Okay. When it comes to national security. And I know everybody in their head, they think that the, Supreme Court is end all be all. Like, no, there are certain things that the executive branch does and the judicial branch does. When it comes to national security, Donald Trump pretty much has, I don't want to say unlimited power, but kind of unlimited. He's the commander in chief, and he swears an oath to protect the sovereignty of our nation. Okay. And you can't do that when you have foreign nationals coming into the country and possibly killing citizens of this country. Okay. So he is operating, yes, outside of the Supreme Court of the United States. But the Supreme Court of the United States is not more powerful than the president. There are certain jobs that they have, and the Supreme Court is overstepping, honestly, and ruling in this matter. Now, if they want to rule on matters as it pertains to Second Amendment, free speech, First Amendment issues, that is their domain, right? When this has nothing to do with national security, okay, of the country and the sovereignty of the country. This is everything to do to protect the citizens of this country, okay, from their Second Amendment rights being stripped from them or revoked from them, their First Amendment speech being violated, or their First Amendment freedom of religion being taken from them. Okay, this is the Supreme Court's domain. Also, the Supreme Court's domain was the student loan forgiveness. Okay. I forget exactly the arguments there. I think they went for, or it was, contested the Supreme Court or the student loan forgiveness. I think it was done via executive order by Joe Biden. They said that it was unconstitutional because what you're going to ultimately wind up doing is taking taxpayer dollars to pay for other people's. So that is a violation of your property, your pursuit of happiness, right? And you are entitled as a human, unalienable rights, and you are to pursue happiness and not have the government come in and take your spoils from you for somebody else. Okay. And this was and this isn't like a government program. This was student loan forgiveness. Okay. And they were trying to forgive it, and the Supreme Court said that you can't do that, Joe, and he did anyway. Okay, this is their domain, okay, because it focuses on the citizenry of the United States. That's what the Supreme Court's domain. His domain is let's keep everybody out on the outside and let's preserve the sovereignty of Donald Trump's domain is let's preserve the sovereignty of this nation. I'm going to be right back. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Welcome to the Red Kingdom. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Head on over to cities99.com and nominate a farmer today. Feed the farmers. It's time to nominate a farmer. We, along with Cornbell Energy, the good guys at Barker Chevy, Computer Financial, and Linco Precision, we are feeding the farmers again this year. Nominate your farmer at cities929.com. If we select them, we will run out freaky fast Jimmy John subs to them while they're working out in their fields. This is a really great thing. If you want to think I'm a farmer, do it today at cities99.com. I do want to get to this. Before we took the break, I was telling you about Democrats going to El Salvador to try to get Kilmar Garcia back to the United States. He's not going to meet with them. Why? Because he doesn't want to look like a rat to his gang, the MS-13 gang that he's a part of, okay, obviously. And it's factually incorrect to claim that deporting an alleged gang member is a threat to Americans in the United States, but it's not like these people are working with facts here. So, like I said, there is a separation of powers. Okay, and it's ridiculous that they're claiming that Donald Trump doesn't respect the branches of government. You know who doesn't respect the branches of government? This is President Joe Biden. Okay, President Joe Biden didn't respect it with student loan forgiveness. Now, he tried to obtain all kinds of money via this executive order to forgive student loans, and he didn't get congressional approval. This is why the Supreme Court struck down that executive order and that program that Joe Biden wanted to install. because you're going to be taking money from the citizenry to pay other citizens, and you have the right, you have constitutional rights to pursue happiness, to property, and that's your money. And Congress has to approve government programs. So Joe Biden is the one who doesn't respect branches of government. Donald Trump is in the right here in that Donald Trump is working to preserve the sovereignty of our nation. And what do I mean by that? I mean, he swears an oath to preserve the sovereignty of our nation and to protect us from enemies abroad. Okay. And foreign nationals coming in and threatening our United States citizenry. That is his domain as the executive power, okay, as the commander in chief. This is a matter of national security, and really this dumb Supreme Court ruling, it doesn't matter. When I say Supreme Court, people they're like, oh, he's not listening to the Supreme Court. How could he? Well, the Supreme Court, they're all, and the beauty of this country is that there is no superior branch of government, okay? They're all doing their own jobs, and they all have their own jobs. There's not a branch of government that is over another, okay? They're all the same, equal, but they do a different job. So the Supreme Court, their domain, and really if Democrats are serious about the constitutional crisis, we should talk about how felons no longer have Second Amendment rights, okay? The freedom of religion atrocities that are happening everywhere, which I will get to. Actually, they're supposed to hear a case about these LGBTQ books in public schools. This was a religious exemption for forcing LGBTQ books in the schools, in public schools. I want to get to that because this district has decided that because parents send their kids to public school, this gives the school officials the ability to override religious exemptions from parents. So if parents say, hey, I have a religious exemptions, I don't want my kid learning about LGBTQ things in these books, I am opting out of that. You can't do that as a parent because according to this Montgomery County Board of Education, they decided that they have the authority to mandate explicit LGBTQ propaganda and restrict parents from opting their kids out. So they're supposed to hear that religious case, also the First Amendment. And that is their domain. The student loan forgiveness thing, they were checking the president on his power because he was trying to essentially legislate and allocate funds. And he was trying to be the purse, right? He was trying to take money from the taxpayers and give it to people for student loan forgiveness. And you can't do that without congressional approval. And they checked him there. The Supreme Court can't check the president when it comes to things like national security and preserving the sovereignty of this country and border enforcement and things like that. The Supreme Court has no domain because he's trying to preserve the rule of law here, where there's laws, there's federal immigration laws, and there's this matter of national security. So Donald Trump is absolutely within his power here to deport illegal aliens, okay, who are gang members and are a threat to American citizens in the United States. Okay, so these people don't operate on facts. They are saying that he was illegally abducted. He was illegally abducted. Okay, he's a citizen of El Salvador. Okay, he's not illegally abducted. He's going back to his home country because he broke federal immigration laws and he happens to be an MS-13 gang member. So she's got some nerve here, this Democrat, claiming that Donald Trump doesn't respect the executive branches of government. He's actually doing his job. He's the enforcement branch, okay? I can't believe that. I feel like these people need a course in civics again, right? But what do we expect? We should expect this from the political party who loves lawlessness. Let's take a listen to this clip. Here we go.
What do you know? Is there any chance you'll be meeting with Abrego Garcia while you're there?
Well, we're actually about to do a press conference to speak a little bit about this, but we got word at the embassy that our request has been denied by the government here locally. They say it's because we're not here on an official capacity. This is part of the reason why Representative Robert Garcia and I sent a letter to Chairman Comer of the Oversight Committee asking for this to be an official CODEL. But we're not giving up. We're going to continue. We have more meetings scheduled for the rest of the day. But part of this, too, is making sure that we keep the conversation alive. We're building off of the trip leadership of Senator Van Hollen. And we're not the first members here, and we're not going to be the last.
What do you
He said it out loud. They're trying everything they can to keep this conversation alive because the American people are not interested in having an MS-13 gang member here, and they have to try to force this conversation into the public conversation and discourse, because people would really prefer they not talk about this kind of stuff. And let's talk about things that actually matter to Americans, not, MS-13 gang members and whether or not they live here in the United States, right? That is not something that matters to the American people. Let's take a listen to this. Here we go.
Decision of the Supreme Court to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back home to the United States. Lower courts have affirmed that. The administration has said they sent him here by accident. And this is a massive due process crisis in our country. Donald Trump cannot defy the Supreme Court. We've got to raise the attention, not just in the U.S., but here, and demand his release. What's really important is that Donald Trump is...
Okay, so let's get to this. According to the left, any enforcement of federal immigration laws is evil, and even if it means alleged gang members, which I don't even know if you could say alleged at this point, because there were courts that... there were court documents that showed his MS-13 gang member tattoos. Okay, so I don't even know if you could really say alleged MS-13 gang member, but they are all about keeping him here in the United States, and they're all about MS-13 gang members residing in the United States. You can't make this level of insanity up anymore. So according to the New York Times, 4 Democrat lawmakers arrived in El Salvador, and they intend to continue pressing for the release of this Maryland resident. Oh my gosh, New York Times, come on now. He's a citizen of El Salvador, and he's not a citizen of the United States. Okay, this El Salvador man who was wrongly deported to a prison in the Central American country. Representatives Robert Garcia, who you just heard in that clip, Maxwell Frost of Florida, Yasemin Ansari of Arizona, and Maxine Dexter of Oregon, they all went there. They're hoping their trip will focus more attention on the Trump administration's lack of action after the Supreme Court ordered the government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Okay, so the Supreme Court can't issue a ruling like this because they are not part of this national security. Okay, this is about the sovereignty of the nation. They have an obligation. Donald Trump has an obligation to preserve the sovereignty of this nation and not have it overtaken by foreign nationals. He's a part of the executive branch. Now, Donald Trump continues to defy the Supreme Court order. This is what New York Times says. Kilmar Garcia is being held illegally in El Salvador after being wrongfully deported, said Mr. Robert Garcia in a statement. That's why we're here to remind the American people that kidnapping immigrants and deporting them without due process is not how we do things here in America. Oh boy, what would then happen if he was released back into the United States? Okay. Does he get citizenship after that? I mean, I don't know what these people want. You really want an MS-13 gang member back here in the United States. The Democrats can continue with their little tantrum here and go to El Salvador all they want and try to speak with the guy. The guy's not going to talk to him. Why? Because he's a part of a gang, and he's going to look like a rat if he starts talking to Democrat senators, okay? So he's not going to be talking to them anytime soon. They're just making themselves look dumb, advocating for the return of a foreign national while refusing to represent the American people is absolutely just dumb. They are actually trying to represent Kilmar Garcia over the American people. And this is exactly why the Democrat Party lost, by the way, in 2024. They lost because of things like this. All right, I got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back. The Easter Bunny, Donald Trump, he dunked on Joe Biden in front of the Easter Bunny. So we're going to get to that clip because it's absolutely hilarious. And then I do want to get to the Democrat Party leader, David Hogg. He's being thrusted out there as leadership. And he diagnoses the real problem in America. And he says that we have too much democracy. This guy is a rabid liberal and he wants to run really, really radical candidates. So there is like a civil war going on among the Democrat Party. And this is going to be really interesting for you to listen to here next on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Whoa! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Yes, we're going to get to this here in just a second. Joe Biden, you guys remember he was ushered by the bunny rabbit, by the Easter bunny just a couple of Easters ago. The one that he, declared Trans Visibility Day, spitting in Christians' faces everywhere. We're going to get to that here in just a second. But real quick, according to BLN News, a hearing was held regarding a complaint filed by Chad Burke. We understand what this complaint is, that they were going around, Lizzie Johnson, the now chair of the McLean County Board, and Cassie Taylor, the county administrator, they were going around trying to raise money for allegedly the county property, or allegedly on county property for the auditor question on the ballot. So the PAC that was established to eliminate the county auditor position, and there was a question on the ballot, and they were a PAC against and advocating no, or to say yes to eliminating that county auditor. So there was a hearing regarding this complaint, and it was heard in what's called an executive session. So which this means, of course, we have no idea what happened in this executive session. So it's heard in private, essentially, this complaint. So we probably won't know until the minutes are released what happened in this hearing that was conducted. But Bloomington and Normal, they never released their executive session minutes. So this is obviously the Illinois State Board of Elections, the Elections Board. And we know that the executive sessions in Bloomington and Normal are typically never released. And in these executive sessions, they talk about things like giving city managers raises. So you have no idea in these executive sessions who is cheerleading for, the city manager to get a salary boost, or who objects to the city manager getting a salary boost. Like, these executive session meetings are kind of hush-hush done privately. So we won't know until those minutes are released what exactly happened. But the complaint that pertained to Lizzie Johnson and Cassie Taylor was heard. This complaint that alleged that they were going around soliciting donations. This was originally the Trevor Sierra email, where he accused them all of going around county property, and he apologized to the taxpayers in this email, and he had alleged that they were going around on county property soliciting donations for this PAC that was established to eliminate the county auditor. Okay, so I want to switch gears here. Let's get to this clip. I think you guys are going to enjoy this here. This is the Easter Bunny. You guys remember the prior administration, the Joe Biden administration, how the Easter Bunny handled the president. Let's compare and contrast these. And Donald Trump actually commented on this Easter Bunny that was at the White House. Take a listen. Here we go. Here's Joe Biden being ushered by the bunny rabbit, the Easter Bunny. Somebody dressed as an Easter Bunny, and they were ushering Joe Biden where to go. Here's Donald Trump.
You remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember? You remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, that was a beautiful moment when the bunny saved Joe Biden.
When the bunny saved Joe Biden. That was a beautiful moment. Anyway, this quote will go down in history, okay? Grab a green crayon if you had to. Write down this quote. That was a beautiful moment, when the Easter Bunny saved Joe Biden. This is such just an iconic quote from President Donald Trump. He's funny, isn't he? So can we believe that we had a president? Can you believe that we had a president whom the Easter Bunny had to discourage from talking to the press? Okay, so Joe Biden, he went over to the press, started talking to people, and then the Easter Bunny came and grabbed him and saved him from the press from, talking to the people, and he ushered him to go a different direction. The fact that the left hid Joe Biden's mental decline, his cognitive decline, for 4 years, and dared to act that this was some sort of surprise and that this had always been a conspiracy theory. I guess he is mentally inefficient, and I guess he is experiencing cognitive decline. And they acted like this was such a surprise. That tells you all you really need to know about this side. Okay, they are not real. They will do anything it takes to push a lie, even if it means like pushing that lie for 4 years and having somebody in a Easter bunny costume direct Joe Biden away from the press. It's baffling. It is. And, surprisingly, this wasn't even Joe Biden's worst holiday event. Okay. I think the worst thing was him during Halloween. We remember this. He was biting children. There was like this child that was dressed up as a chicken, and he goes and he bends down and he bites this baby during a Halloween event. And the fact that this guy was the leader of the free world, the total embarrassment. I'm so glad that we have Donald Trump in there, and he's making a joke, and he's a cracking joke. He had to dunk on Joe Biden, right? With the Easter Bunny. And what really bothers me is March 31st was declared Transvisibility Day, which also happened to be Easter last year. And, you've got Donald Trump talking about his glorious resurrection, Jesus Christ's resurrection. Yesterday, I told you that there are 10 irrefutable facts about and surrounding the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the fact that you had not only, Joe Biden, out there with the Easter Bunny and making this Trans Day visibility, which is just to spin the face to Christians everywhere. But locally, you've got people who wouldn't recognize that this is a Christian holiday, and I can't help but feel like this is just ridiculous. When you have things like Hanukkah or Ramadan or whatever it is, there was actually something in Normal not too long ago. It was like some sort of festival of colors, and then you look further and you're like, oh, this is a Hinduism celebration. And they do this kind of stuff all of the time, and they're the ones who are the biggest screamers about separation of church and state. Why post about Easter at all? If you're not going to say anything nice, and if you're going to be offensive and talk about Easter as if it's like some holiday made for Easter bunnies who lay eggs, right? If you're going to talk about it like that, then you probably shouldn't say anything at all, because it's deeply offensive to the Christian community. Like I said, there's no comparison between Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. Last year, Transvisibility Day, a spit in the face to Christians everywhere. We believe that you are wonderfully made, fearfully and wonderfully made by God. And there is no changing that, that you are not a mistake, okay, and that God has a plan and purpose for your life, and your body is not a mistake. We believe that as Christians, and to proclaim Easter, the day of the resurrection, as Transvisibility Day is just a spit in the face to Christians absolutely everywhere. So I want to get to a couple of other things here this morning. Sleepy Joe probably doesn't even remember, honestly, that Transvisibility Day was his handlers probably declared it Transvisibility Day. I want to be clear. His administration, he didn't stand for anything, okay? His administration stood for everything politically correct at the expense of being morally and factually correct. Easter is about the resurrected Christ. That is factually correct. That is morally correct to recognize it as such, and then to spit in the face of Christians by declaring it Transvisibility Day is just a whole nother, politically correct at the expense of Christians. However, that's no longer the case. We have a president who doesn't fear the press. He doesn't fear being politically correct. He doesn't have to be saved by the Easter Bunny. And this is just another reason why Kamala Harris, the people who were running Kamala Harris, that's why they lost this last election. Okay, I want to get to the Supreme Court. I teased this a little bit in the beginning of the 7 o'clock hour. There is a school district who has decided that parents, because they send their kids to public schools, it gives the school the ability to override the religious exemption of parents. Okay, so parents who don't want their kids being exposed to same-sex relationships and LGBTQ books, they are entitled to opt out of that kind of curriculum or those kinds of readings because they opt in automatically by sending their kids to public school. That is what the Montgomery County Board of Education is arguing. We're going to get to this here next on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Hey, smash that like button. Smash it right now. We're going to get to this. The Supreme Court ruling. They're set to rule on this case. This is going to be a big deal because it's going to show that, you know, it's not separation from, okay, not separation from your religion, okay, just because, you know, you're sending your kids to a state school or to a taxpayer funded school, that doesn't mean that you are not entitled to your religion anymore, okay? And it also doesn't mean that religion has to be out of government entirely. We know that not to be true because they pray a lot of times before they conduct a vote on the congressional floor, House floor, or Senate floor. They'll pray, they'll swear in on a Bible. So a lot of people have this misconception of separation of church and state. They think that, oh, that must mean that there is no religion that can be exercised within government at all. And that's not true. And really, what LGBTQ, these books, what it is, it's the antithesis of Christianity. And these parents are saying, or Christianity and other religions. Okay, so there is a Muslim, Catholic, and Ukrainian Orthodox parents who have now lodged a complaint or opened up a First Amendment case. And they're suing the school. Okay, so we're going to get to this. The Supreme Court of the United States is going to hear a religious expression case. So just because there's this so-called separation of church and state doesn't mean that you can't express religion in government. Okay, so these public school teachers who say, well, I can't, you know, fly the Christian flag, or I can't talk about Jesus, or I can't wear my cross to school because I have to be in line with separation of church and state. That is not what we're talking about here. You are free to express religion within government. Okay, this is clearly a violation of religious expression, denying these parents the ability to launch a religious exemption and say, hey, I want to opt my kids out of the LGBTQ books. Okay, so we're going to get to this story. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. The Supreme Court will hear the arguments in the case brought forth by Maryland parents against the Montgomery County Board of Education members over mandated inclusion of storybooks that celebrate gender transitions, explore pride parades, and introduce same-sex romance between young children. Okay, so these are storybooks that feature all of that. Let me share this with you. This is the Post-Millennial. Okay, you'll see this. Libby Emmons, Supreme Court, is going to hear this religious expression case. Here are some of the book titles that you can see. The parents sued the school after the board removed their ability to opt their children out of these readings. They argued that requiring their young children to participate in instruction, contrary to the parents' religious convictions, violated the free exercise clause. Okay, so there is a free exercise clause. And the board had stated in March of 2023 that a notification would go out to parents before such a book is read to students, and the parents would be able to opt their children out of this book being read to them. But they reversed course, stating that in 2023-2024 school year, no further notice would be provided and no opt-outs would be tolerated as to the storybooks. Okay, so they aren't going to allow parents to opt out of these readings. They're not going to notify parents when these readings are happening at the school of these LGBTQ books. And the parents are saying, hey, our religious expression is being violated, our free exercise. Okay, we are freely, we should be able to freely exercise our religion. And if we want to opt our kids out of these LGBTQ book readings, then we should be able to. Okay, so the Supreme Court is going to hear this. There's a lot more that I could get to this morning. I'm going to finish this story up. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Let me get to some of your comments. If the bunny ever, and I'll tell them to go. They make a good stew. Yeah, bunny stew. Yeah, rabbit stew. I've had that before. It's pretty good. I've only tried it. Okay, I didn't have like a whole heaping bowl because I couldn't get past that. They were really cute little bunnies. I love bunnies. Okay, number one, but they have no place really in the conversation of Easter. To be honest with you, if I was president, I wouldn't even allow the Easter bunny to be walking around. I think that there's a fine line that you can, as long as you're including Christ in the conversation, that this is what Easter is all about. Yeah, sure, whatever. You have all the bunnies you want. Me personally, I don't decorate with Easter bunnies and eggs. I don't do that. I'm not gonna because I think it's dumb. In that the holiday isn't about bunnies who lay eggs or whatever. And of course, I've told you guys about the satanic ritual with the fertility. All of that represents fertility and the goddess of Ishtar, right? And I just don't do it in my house. So I think that there's a fine line you can do that, but also completely blatantly ignoring the fact that this is a religious holiday for Christians to celebrate the resurrection of Christ is just absurd to me. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat City Study 2.9, the news in Talk Bloomington Normal. Before I took break, I was telling you, back in my day, if you were telling kids about same-sex romances between young children, or pride parades or gender transitionings, back in my day, we would say that that's grooming. Okay. So the Supreme Court, they're going to hear this case. The district has decided that because parents send their kids to public school, that is automatic, like permission, or that they can override the religious exemptions from parents. So parents, they don't want in this school, they don't want their kids to be read these LGBTQ books. They want to be notified, and they want to opt their kids out from taking part in these readings. But the school district said that they can't do that. And the reason why is because their parents, overrided their religious exemptions when they decided to send their kids to public school. This is what your public school thinks about your religious expression, by the way, and your religious convictions. If you don't believe me, just try opting your kid out of some of the curriculum surrounding LGBTQism. Then you're going to see the same thing happen to you as these Montgomery County parents saw happen to them. So the district, they're saying that because you opt them into public school, we can teach them pretty much anything they want, even if it goes against your religious convictions. The Montgomery County Board of Education decided that it's well within its authority to mandate explicit LGBTQ propaganda and restrict parents from opting their kids out. But this little thing called the First Amendment, because of that little thing, the Muslims, the Catholics, and Ukrainian Orthodox parents, the parents of these kids sued the school. Okay, so the Supreme Court is going to be hearing this. It's Maryland parents against the Montgomery County Board of Education members who mandated inclusion of these storybooks to celebrate gender transition, explore pride parades, and introduce same-sex romances between young children. So one of these books, there's like kids who are engaging in a same-sex relationship, children depicted in this book. It's absolutely wild to me. I don't know. That used to be called grooming. The parents sued the school after the board removed their ability to opt out children from these readings. They argued that requiring their young children to participate in instruction contrary to the parents' religious convictions violated the free exercise clause. That's what the parents are arguing, that, hey, you're violating my free exercising my religion clause. You're not allowing me to opt my kids out from reading these books or from listening to these books. So the board stated back in March of 2023 that proper notification would go out to the parents before such a book is read to the students, and that the parents could opt their children out. They decided to reverse course on all of that. And they stated in the 2023-2024 school year that no further notice would be provided and no opt-outs would be tolerated as to these storybooks. So that means you can't opt out. You won't be notified if your kids are getting this LGBTQ propaganda shoved down their throats. The district implies that the justification for removing the notification and the opting out process is they justify this, that saying the religious wishes of the parents. They say that with the woke orthodoxy, okay, with this religion, they pretty much consented to this because they send their kids to public school. Okay, so they are allowed to remove the notification process, the opting out process. They're allowed to remove that simply because you've enrolled your kids into public schools, and we can teach them this woke orthodoxy because you consented to it, because you enrolled your kids in public school. This is what your public school officials think about you and your religion, okay? This is insanity, and to say that is an understatement. The petition to the Supreme Court cited the lower court's ruling on the matter, saying that parents essentially surrendered their right to direct religious upbringing of their children by sending them to public schools. Okay, so this is what they're saying, the school district is saying, is that the parents essentially surrendered their rights to a religious upbringing when they decided to send their kids to public school. And look, this contradicts centuries of our history and our traditions, and this whole separation of church and state thing, total bogus. People have misinterpreted that. This does not mean you don't have the right to express yourself in government when it comes to your religion. Okay, so religious expression. For example, you read the Bible, you swear, you put your hand on the Bible. Like, we are a Christian nationalist country. Okay, we put our hand on the Bible and we swear our politicians in. Okay, we say a prayer before we take votes. Religious expression is allowed in government. Okay, and these parents should have the right to express their religious convictions by opting their children out of the LGBTQ readings, these books. So those traditions uphold that what the decision below tears down. Parents' right to protect their kids' innocence and their direct religious upbringing. So the parents want to protect their kids' innocence and their religious convictions. And the lower court, they ruled that the parents essentially surrendered their right to a religious upbringing because they enrolled their kids in public schools. So this is going to be a huge case. Hopefully the Supreme Court rules on the side of, freedom to exercise your religion and freedom of expression, right, to exercise your religion. The justification the school made is so infuriating, okay, that just because you enroll your kids into government schools does not automatically mean that religion is to be exempted completely from this, from the public school entity, and that you're not allowed to express your religious convictions. Firstly, the Board of Education works for parents. It does not go the other way around. They don't work against parents, okay? They're all elected, the Board of Education, okay? They're all elected, and they work for the parents. It's not the other way around. Secondly, why are they so hell-bent on teaching children about LGBTQism? Why are they so hell-bent on doing this? I just don't get it. That seems like a lot of work for a lot of students. Just let the kids opt out. Just let the parents opt their kids out of these readings. What's so hard about that? Why are they so invested in teaching kids about gender transitions, about same-sex romances between young, small children, which is depicted in some of these books? Back in my day, when you would talk to kids about sexual relations or same-sex romances, that is grooming. That's what I would call grooming. Okay, adults talking to little kids about this kind of stuff, that's called grooming. And, they're saying that the parents surrendered the rights to directly bring their kids up in a religious way by sending them to public school. If you enroll them in public school, you automatically give your kids to this. And to be honest with you, they're not wrong. I think it's dumb, and but this is what your public school thinks about you. Because you enrolled them, they're their kids now. Okay, so that's how they feel about parents. It's a scandal that they're teaching kids this, obviously reading pride books, reading gender transition books, reading books about same-sex romances between two young kids. This has nothing to do with respecting all people despite insignificant character traits like their sexual orientation or the color of their skin or whatever it is. You can teach kids to respect all people without shoving same-sex romances down their throats in the form of a storybook. Okay, the Trump administration, they did issue a brief supporting the parents on this, stating that the school has no right to refuse parents the ability to opt out their children out of these compulsory classroom instructions. And at the end of the day, my encouragement to you would be just to pull your kids out. Make it easy for everybody, and don't give them a reason to say that, hey, you've surrendered your rights to your kids. They're ours now, and we're going to bring them up the way we see fit. Okay, just pull them out. Parents' religious obligations. Like these instructions contradict these classroom instructions to read these LGBTQ books. It contradicts the parents' religious obligations to their children. So the Trump administration has commented on this. I'm going to take a quick break, but we're going to come back. We're going to wrap this story up, and I've got another one here for you next on Conservative Cat. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Yes, head on over to cities929.com and find out how you can win a deluxe Caribbean cruise from Expedia Cruises and Cities 92.9. It's real easy. Get ready to sail away with Cities 92.9 and Expedia Cruises. You can register for a cruise and become a finalist during our cruise stops throughout the spring. We'll be taking entries, drawing 2 finalists. You win a prize pack, and then you qualify for a spot at our grand prize giveaway on June 26th at the New Smash House Tavern on Prospect Road in Bloomington. The first finalist is going to be pulled within 30 minutes of the start of our broadcast. It's a 2-hour live broadcast, and then the second at the end of the broadcast. You got to be present to win. So far, there are some stops on cities929.com that you can check out. The next stop is at Deep End Tap in Bloomington. The first drawing is going to be at 5:30, and the stop is from 5 to 7. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about the Supreme Court. They're going to hear this case. The Trump administration did issue a statement about this case supporting parents. Now, the parents, they want to opt their kids out of readings of these LGBTQ books in public school. And they did have a process set up where they would notify the parents that, hey, these readings are going to take place and you can opt your kids out. But then they removed those processes, the notification process and the opt-out process. And then they said that the reason why they were removing that is because your enrollment of your children in the public school, that automatically means that you have surrendered your right to direct religious upbringing of your children by sending them to public schools. Okay. And the lower court agreed with the school district. So now it's going up to the Supreme Court. Somewhere along the progressive path of destruction, the left decided that they know best, and they have fought tooth and nail to destroy parental rights. That's what this is really all about, is parental rights. And that's deeply unpopular with the American people, going after parents and their rights to raise their children up the way that they see fit, raise them in a religious upbringing. And this isn't even just Christians, okay? Muslims are taking issue with this policy that the school has implemented, where they've gotten rid of the notification and the opt-out process. Muslim, Orthodox, Ukrainians, Catholics. I mean, there's all kinds of people who are taking issue with this. But why? Because it's deeply unpopular with Americans. They want their children to be theirs, okay? Not the public school systems and not the government's. And the sooner you realize, left, that this is deeply unpopular with the American people, the better off you're going to be in elections. So, I mean, I guess keep doing this because you're never going to win an election again if you keep going after parental rights like this. All right, I've got to go. But earlier in the show, if you guys missed any of it, we talked about the guy that was charged with smash and grab, the jewelry heist at the Bloomington Mall. That was very controversial because the Bloomington police didn't really come out with a whole lot of details about the suspect. But despite there definitely probably being security footage of the suspect going off on a bicycle, they didn't really release too much information other than they were upset that people took to social media, victims took to social media and said that they thought that they had heard gunshots because, I don't know, they were in an emotionally heightened state and they heard smashing sounds, popping sounds, and they thought that it was a gun. And they took issue with that. They said that the victims were causing unnecessary fear and confusion. But really, I think that it's actually the guy who was doing the smashing and the grabbing that was causing unnecessary fear and confusion. But whatever. We also talked about this proposed Essex development, Collie Ridge, corner of Shelbourne and Beech, multifamily housing, right? There's like quietly, you're going to see this happen in Bloomington and in Normal, where they don't do single family housing anymore because they want it to be like Chicago. They want these big corporate landlords to come in and make a ton of money and then later fill their campaign coffers up with cash. Okay, that's how this kind of works. They did it in Chicago. They're going to do it here in Bloomington Normal. We've got the multifamily housing, check. Crime rate going up in Bloomington by 1.5%, check. Robberies going up by 88%, check. Okay, so how much more are we going to start to look like Chicago? Probably it's going to get much, much worse. But there's a planning commission meeting, and if you are opposed to multifamily housing coming to this neighborhood, you live in that neighborhood, you want to preserve the peace and tranquility that you experience in this kind of small town feel of Normal, where you have these wonderful neighborhoods, and then you're part of a much bigger, town. That's the beauty of but people tell me, that lived in Normal. They're like, yeah, that's the beauty of this place. if you are against this and you don't want your lifestyle to be disrupted by these major multifamily housing units, go to the Planning Commission. There's a meeting on May 8th, okay, if you want to make your voice heard. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. I love you. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll be back again tomorrow.